Christianity.
We're going into like a pop culture kind of thing. Like, here we are, sending this to E Extra. Hot or not, Christianity.
How would you rate Christianity on a scale of 1 to 10?
Well, I think we're in a very exciting time where Christianity and a lot of other religions are going to be facing an increased amount of pressure to evolve based upon what knowledge that we know. And with the global exchange of information, that's going to slowly take place over time, and it already is. The Catholic religion is on the decline, and Unitarians are up because they're more accepting. The fate of Christianity, in Christianity, of course, meaning that there's a lot of different sects of Christianity and whatnot, will have to evolve over time, or they will eventually, the fanatics will cause some sort of a war, and we'll be right back into Christians versus Muslims, in modern times. What do I think that Christianity needs to do to change? I think that's a big question. I don't know. Well, why don't you answer that question?
Okay. Bishop Spong, who's a priest in the Episcopal Church, I believe. I've read his book on Christianity Must Change or Die.
Oh, really? I'll have to read that book.
It's great. Because as a pagan shaman myself, I firmly believe that it is not rational to take mythology literally. Even when doing archaeology based on mythology, in other words, there's truths, there's relative truths in mythology. So there's some historic truths, there's some human truths, like human social interaction truths, and there's spiritual truths. Yep. But these are metaphors for applying. They're not literal translations a lot of times, like with Searching for Troy or the Legends of King Minos, the Minoans. There's a difference between the mythology and then facts, like historic facts. Yep. They're related, but they're not the same. And so I think Christianity needs to accept that, because the Bible is mythology, which is taken as wholly magical literature. They wouldn't call it magic, but for all intents and purposes, it's mystical and beyond normal mundane things.
Right. I think the idea that Christianity is partly based on mythology brings an inherent defensiveness to it. How can you say that about the Bible? It's the Bible, And I think that's something that kind of something that has to be knocked down quite a bit. I'm reading recently in Dawkins' book, everybody in the world and every entity in the world is subject to, jokes and humor and ridicule, except for religion. You can make fun of everything in the world for fun. And part of, human beings learn through humor and learn through, music and art and all this other stuff. So why limit yourself, to be able to do that, And it should be acceptable to ridicule religion as well.
The more dogmatic a religion gets, the more exclusive it becomes ideologically, and because they want to include everyone into one strict interpretation, it's a way of manipulating and a way of controlling for the authorities of that establishment. And so once you realize that the more liberal the interpretations and the more accepting you are of other people's ways, the better it is, because if the goal is to love and get along, then you cannot tell somebody else that they have to believe exactly as you do, because that makes no sense, and that's never been the case in the history of humanity. You cannot all think the same way. It's just irrational.
I think you make a very good point. That's along the lines of what Joseph Campbell says about mythology, that a lot of the religions get down to there's a split. Either you're going there's one sort of way and all the other ways are bad, or there's even getting deeper into that, there's two sort of spiritual ways to go. You're either going away from God or you're coming back to God. And Christianity, I think, and other religions, try to, value people going back to God. And they try to orient everything towards pulling people back to God. To put it very simply, should I go see the latest Avengers movie or should I go to church? A purely Christian point of view would say, well, going to see Avengers is going to take you away from God, so you shouldn't be doing that. You should be, going to church instead. I'm making it very simple, but that's, kind of like an example of I think, where Christianity is getting really fanatic. Alright, so getting back to what we were saying, sorry we took a little break here, but taking everything literally versus myth. And I think you're making a very good point that if you are to take the Bible literally, that brings up the problem of the landscape in which you're doing that, because there are other facts and evidence in mythology wherever you go that will contradict the literalness of it. And like what you were other saying too, that new evidence is being discovered, and I would bet that there's plenty of evidence now today that suggests things contrary to Christianity, that some of which you can probably look around on the internet and find out about, and that just no one cares and no one wants to bring it publicly. In that it doesn't change the established order or power that exists, or things have been discovered and Christianity, various forms of Christianity are suppressing all that knowledge. Like they have, I'm not saying this literally, but like they have some artifact, like in a back room that proves that Jesus didn't exist or something like that, or that he was different, or that certain parts of evidence are contrary. But they just can't release it to the public, because if they did, then that would mean shattering their entire religion. And there's an importance to keep the religious order in place, in order, because if they don't, then that will shatter and it'll all come crumbling down, and they don't want that. Or I guess, what you're saying, which is even worse, is that they don't care. And it's out there anyway, and no one believes it anyway, and my God, what do we do from there?
Yeah, it's currently popular to debunk conspiracy theories, but the problem with why that's not sustainable is because conspiracies happen all the time throughout history. Because a conspiracy is simply a plan, a plot by various people to do something. So in other words, a conspiracy of government is when people get together and make plans to make laws and to enact things. That's a conspiracy. Mm-hmm. A theory is a notion, an idea that something could possibly be true. Mm-hmm. In science, you have theories. Mm-hmm. Those theories are then tested. And then if there's enough evidence, they're considered laws. However, they're still also theories.
Yep.
And they can be disproven. So conspiracies are real. Theories are also real. Mm-hmm. And they both happen all the time.
Yeah. So it's more likely than not, that something about which I just described exists.
There were absolutely witch hunts. That's not disputed.
Yep.
There were absolutely conferences held by ministers in the church.
Yep.
There's absolutely organized plans to control the direction of organized Christianity as a church. There were debates about the life of Jesus as interpreted through Scripture versus the orthodoxy of church, and they were in conflict, but they chose to go in the direction of a church.
And then we had the great canonization that happened, years ago. Certain parts were thrown out, certain parts were put back in or changed. Which I don't know why that's not talked about more, because that is, true, which most people would agree is true. Then how can you not say that certain things they didn't like were thrown out, and certain things that they wanted to keep, they focused more on? You can't say that that's not true.
The decisions to keep certain scriptures were culturally biased and prejudiced against the cultures that they viewed as not legitimate. The cultural interpretations of Gnosticism and of other sects of Christianity and influences of other religions on Christianity, which Christianity itself evolved out of another religion, so it didn't come born pure as a pure religion. It came out of other religions, specifically Hebrew mostly.
Yep.
But in other words, religions are never purely one thing unto themselves. They've always evolved from something previous. Always. They never come pure unto themselves.
And I think that's the big question moving forward. What are they going to evolve into? What is the future of Christianity? Like your author previous said, that is Christianity going to evolve or die? Who knows? Who knows?
So, so you could argue if you wanted to say there was such a thing as a pure religion, so you'd have to say, what is pure Christianity? Is pure Christianity the orthodoxy of the Catholic Church during what period? Or is it the exact teachings of Jesus Christ? And how can we know that? How can we know what the exact teachings are if the history, which was written down after he died, is...
But you realize, regardless, like, a lot of people who are in religion don't, know nothing about any sort of history. Unless you're a history buff, you don't know the latest archaeological evidence, you don't know the latest findings, you don't know the latest research. If it all exists and is present to be accessible, which, could possibly not be, you think that people, in, more southern states, are studying, looking at the Bible and then wondering about the historical relevance and gaining additional information? I don't think so. I think they're just reading the Bible and making their interpretation as is seen in there, and buying tapes and CDs of the preacher who is just preaching, the Word of God or whatever. So
I've been accused of making Christianity into what I want it to be, but I firmly believe that anybody with conviction does that. You mold what your view of things to fit yourself, and your how you see yourself is molded based on how you see other things, and it's organic like that.
And maybe part of what the danger, and I feel like the danger is getting a whole lot more worse recently, like maybe in the last couple years, that Christianity is sort of taking on the personalities of the religious leaders in power. I would
argue that's always been the case.
That's always been, well, I probably would agree with you on that. But even more so now.
Okay.
And part of
because I would say give me an example when it hasn't been the case that somebody hasn't molded Christianity to fit their view.
Fair point. Fair point, Drogo. What I'm saying is that the people are molding these opinions. They're stronger, and with the media, it's reaching more people, and it's generating, more people are buying these. When I say buying, I mean buying a CD, but also buying into what they're saying. And part of the message of what they're saying is to follow and not to think critically about it.
And that's always been
And
the case,
that
too.
is also suppressing other aspects out of, humanity that I think is damaging. In other words, if I listened to a preacher and I just absorbed what he was saying into my way of life, my energy is invested into doing those things, as opposed to investing any of my energy into reading information or scientific literature or historical documents about understanding the whole landscape of what is being said and why it's being said. And I think that maybe one of the things that we should be doing should be to push religious leaders to add more of the historical element into the teachings of religion, and encourage people to explore and to learn, as opposed to buy my tape because it's inspirational.
Right. Both of us consider ourselves not to be Christian. However, we were both raised in a supposedly Christian America.
Well, theoretically, I have been baptized.
Okay.
I did go through confirmation.
Okay. Ooh, la, la.
So from the strict definition, I can say, well, I'm not Christian. Well, any Christian would tell me that. Well, you are, because you went through the ritual. You can't just unchristian yourself if I've been baptized. My sins have been removed from the world. So therefore, I am Christian whether I like it or not.
So I feel that that's why, because we have the background of Christianity, that we feel a need, a desire to criticize and speak about Christianity, because it is a big part of our lives. We're faced with it almost every day, and it's part of how we think because of our upbringing. And that's why we're not criticizing Islam right now, because we weren't raised in an Islamic society.
Well, one of the reasons why we could have a discussion on Islam. Part of the reason why I can't really, I would be a little less comfortable discussing Islam, but it would be in the same vein of discussing Christianity. I agree with you. I know less about Islam than I do Christianity, because I grew up with it, and but there are the similar elements in Islam that would match the. That's why Christians fight Islamics all the time.
Right.
Throughout history.
Yeah, when the majority religions are about literal interpretation, I think that's why we believe there's a problem.
Mm-hmm. And that's why, when people are saying, yeah, there's the dangers of Islam, I'm like, yeah, there are dangers in Islam. But so the same thing in Christianity.
Yeah.
It's just, that religious belief altogether is harmful. And there's, historical reasons, for a lot of those things. But, you could ask the question, which is worse, Islam or Christianity? And I don't think there's a difference in terms of what's worse.
Yeah,
tomato, tomato.
Which is a worse way to say tomato? Tomato or tomato? Okay, moving on to astrology. Or do you want to wrap something?
Let's wrap this up, and then can we start a new one?
Okay.
Let's do that. We'll leave you with that, and till next time.